Good afternoon. Before we begin the first item of business, I undertook to respond to Mr Whitfield after a point of order he made at the end of the members' business debate last night. I have had time to reflect on that, and I would advise Mr Whitfield and the Chamber accordingly. A bill must, on introduction, be accompanied by a financial memorandum which sets out best estimates of the costs, savings and changes to revenues to which the provisions of the bill would give rise. The rules on the financial memorandum do not require it to include comment on the merits or otherwise of the bill's provisions. That information is included in the bill's policy memorandum. And as Mr Whitfield will be aware, while interlinked, standing orders make separate provision in relation to financial resolutions. Where it is determined that a bill requires a financial resolution, no proceedings may be taken on the bill at any stage after stage 1, unless the Parliament has, by resolution, agreed to a financial resolution. And I hope that clarification is indeed helpful. We move to the first item of business, which are portfolio questions. The first portfolio is Rural Affairs, Land Reform and Islands. I'd advise the Chamber that across the afternoon we are incredibly tight for time. Therefore, I would make the usual plea for brevity in questions and responses. I will do my best to get in as many supplementaries as I can. I think it's unlikely I will get them all in, but I will do my best. And with that, I call question number 1, Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what engagement it's had with Seafood Scotland regarding the development of the Scottish Ocean Cluster.
Cabinet Secretary Marie Goujon.
I was fortunate to actually join Seafood Scotland for the launch of their Ocean Cluster project at the Seafood Expo Global Conference in May. Now, this project represents a really welcome new approach to maximise the value and sustainability of our seafood industry, and it focuses on a really critical opportunity, utilising industry byproducts that have traditionally been underutilised or simply just discarded. So I'm really hopeful that the project is going to drive that further innovation and sustainability in our seafood, while at the same time maximising the value that we get from those products.
Audrey Nicholl.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her response. And the Scottish Ocean Cluster has the potential to drive innovation and entrepreneurship within the blue economy by creating value from underutilised side streams. And a successful Iceland Ocean Cluster, a model that Scotland seeks to emulate, has generated high-value jobs in engineering, AI, product design and biotechnology, contributing to vibrant and sustainable local economies. And furthermore, the Iceland cluster has driven substantial growth in their biotechnology sector and seen the establishment of its first unicorn company, which creates high-value medical products from fish side streams, namely cod skin. So the Scottish Ocean Cluster would have the added benefit of access to our established biotechnology and innovation facilities. So does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that this development has significant merit, and would she agree to meet
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think that Audrey Nicholl raises some really important points there. I think it's been so exciting to see what's been developed in Iceland, and I think we can only hope to build on that ambition and make the most of the opportunities that exist in Scotland to really capitalise on the innovation, on new funding streams, and that's where I'm more than happy to commit to a meeting with Audrey Nicholl. I think it would also be beneficial to include Seafood Scotland as part of that meeting too, so we can discuss the project in more detail.
And supplementary, Finlay Carson.
The Cabinet Secretary very helpfully accepted my invitation to join cockle fisher stakeholders in a meeting in Newton Stewart in July. At that meeting, the Cabinet Secretary committed to come back with a progress report on the approach to opening a sustainable cockle fishery on the Solway. Can the Cabinet Secretary update the Chamber on where that update is, please?
Cabinet Secretary.
I just want to thank Finlay Carson for the meeting that I held with him and with his constituent in relation to this fishery, which I think was a really helpful discussion. I am still waiting on more information coming forward from officials, but I will keep the member updated when I receive that information, and will look to discuss that with him further then.
Thank you. Question 2, Liam Kerr.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what the justification was at the time for the purchase of Glenprosen by Forestry and Land Scotland in November 2022, with a reported cost to the public of £17.6 million.
Cabinet Secretary.
The strategic objectives of acquiring the additional land at Glenprosen was to create a contiguous area of 10,000 hectares of land in public ownership across the Angus Glens and within the Cairngorms National Park. Now, this provides an opportunity for the development of an exemplar of integrated integrated land management, which can demonstrate how habitat restoration, forestry, agriculture and other land uses can be ultimately combined in a way that furthers the Scottish Government aims for people's well-being, for nature recovery at scale, climate resilience, and ultimately we all want to see thriving rural communities.
Liam Kerr.
Well, for 3 years, the only formal reason given was strategic importance, although what that is has never been formally set out. The public didn't ask for it, the people in the Glen didn't want it, and 3 years on, they still await the promised management plan which would explain the strategic importance. Now, given under the SNP's new land reform legislation, such a failure to produce a plan would result in a massive fine to the taxpayer, when will the plan be laid? What will be the amount of the fine if it's not? And from which budget would it come?
Cabinet Secretary.
I believe that the land management plan has, well, there's been significant consultation and engagement in development of the plan, and I believe it's now been submitted to the regulator, that's Scottish Forestry, or well, it will be in the coming months, and has been finalised. But it has taken a long time to develop, purely because of, as I say, the extensive engagement and consultation that's taking place. But of course, when we pass, well, hopefully when the Scottish Parliament passes the Land Reform Bill, which is currently working its way through the processes at the moment, of course, I would expect our public agencies to follow that and, if anything, lead by example when it comes to the different initiatives we'll be introducing.
Supplementary, Mercedes Villalba.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. We've just heard from the Cabinet Secretary that Forestry and Land Scotland purchased Glen Prosen for the purposes of nature recovery, climate resilience and public health and wellbeing activities, clearly in the public interest. When I consulted on my proposed land ownership and public interest bill, I found widespread support for a public interest test on transfers of large land holdings. So will the Cabinet Secretary support the inclusion of a public interest test in the Scottish Government's land reform bill ahead of stage 3?
Cabinet Secretary.
As the member will be aware, and as we've discussed at length and through stage 2 consideration of the land reform bill, we have been looking at wording that could be introduced that would reference a public interest test, and to do that in a way that is ultimately workable in achieving the aims that we've set out in the bill. But I look forward to continuing to engage with Mercedes Villalba and with members across the chamber as we look to again strengthen the bill and work on amendments as we look ahead to stage 3.
Question 3, Ruth Maguire.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what work it's doing to support sustainable farming and food production that's based on improving biodiversity.
Minister Jim Fairley.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. As per the Vision for Agriculture, Scotland will have a support framework that delivers high-quality food production, climate mitigation and adaptation and nature restoration. The Agri-Environment Climate Scheme continues to support for targeted environmental actions, with £339 million committed since 2015. The £14 million Future Farming Investment Scheme will facilitate farmer-led actions to restore nature, address climate change and improve business efficiency. We have new requirements to prevent damage to peatlands and wetlands, and the Whole Farm Plan Biodiversity Audit encourages the adoption of nature-friendly approaches. The transition to the 4-tier framework will further incentivise farmers and crofters to improve biodiversity.
Ruth Maguire.
Thank the Minister for that answer. As of last week, support payments of more than £322 million were reaching the accounts of farmers and crofters. Uniquely in the UK, Scotland maintained direct payments, showing the SNP values the work of farmers and crofters and knows the importance of stability and the ability to plan. Can I ask the Minister how much of this funding has been received by Ayrshire agricultural businesses compared to equivalent businesses in England, thanks to the policies of the SNP?
Minister.
I'd very much like to thank Ruth Maguire for bringing this question to the Chamber, because it allows me to say that this Government wholeheartedly supports our farmers and crofters, and we recognise how crucial forward planning is for agricultural businesses. That's why we have committed to no cliff edge in support as we transition to the new 4-tier framework. As of the 8th of September, Basic Payment Scheme and Greening 2025 advance payments worth £21,799,762 have been issued to businesses in Ayrshire local authority areas. That's one part of a wider package of support that we're delivering to farmers and crofters, such as the aforementioned Agri-Environment Scheme. And I'd like to point out that Andrew Conn of the NFUS was delighted to see these payments coming into farmers.
Brief supplementary, Ariane Burgess.
Presiding Officer, Scotland's legislated for sustainable regenerative agriculture, but stakeholders, farmers and other people employed in the sector are concerned that little has been done to provide the education and training opportunities needed for this urgent shift. Without a properly funded long-term education skills pipeline, there is a real risk that this agricultural transition will stall before it has had a chance to get started. What consideration has the Minister given to allocating a greater proportion of funding to the education and skills tier of the farm support budget to ensure that the agricultural workforce has the skills training it needs?
I thank Ariane Burgess for that question, but I'm sure that the member already knows that there is a range of things that happen in agriculture that help that knowledge exchange between farmers and amongst the community. And in the specific terms, Tier 4 is about continuous personal development, and that will help to continue to get farmers into the place where they can deliver the vision of what this agricultural programme looks like.
Thank you. Question 4, Martin Whitfield.
I'm grateful, Deputy Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government, as part of the cross-government coordination on islands, what discussions the Rural Affairs Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding action to ensure that island communities are protected through an effective flood resilience strategy in light of Audit Scotland's reported findings on the weakness in preparedness.
Minister.
Climate change adaptation and improving resilience to flooding, including for our island communities, is a priority for the Scottish Government across ministerial portfolios. The recently completed Millport Coastal Flood Protection Scheme exemplifies that commitment. We've invested £39 million to safeguard island homes, businesses and critical infrastructure, and that demonstrates how national leadership and local delivery can build real resilience for island communities. We are carefully considering the Audit Scotland report, noting that many of the recommendations align with the work underway as part of our National Flood Resilience Strategy, which itself was subject to an island community impact assessment and requires cross-government working.
Martin Whitfield.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for that question. The Auditor-General's report makes it clear that Scotland does not have a clear national plan to improve the resilience of communities to flooding. It highlights that the funding model is not fit for purpose, costs rising from £350 million to over £1 billion. In a previous answer, the Minister spoke of the wholehearted support for farmers, for crofters, and I assume for our communities. So why is it, after 17 years in government, the SNP has still failed to produce a fully costed, time-bound flood resilience plan, and when will one finally be put in place?
Minister.
Well, I would kind of dispute the characterisation that Martin Whitfield puts forward to me, and I would also point out that what we got in the report was the statement that a positive step forward in providing there is a positive step forward in providing the strategic leadership that is needed. And the Scottish Government has funded improving flood resilience across communities in Scotland since 2016 and have allocated over £570 million to local authorities to support flood protection schemes and wider flood resilience.
Number of supplementaries. I'll try and get as many in as I can. First, Alistair Allen.
My constituency is already prone to significant flooding, with alerts issued again at the weekend for both Stornoway and Ballasher. As the Minister may be aware, the Ballasher Causeway was built in the 1960s, and given that upgrades since the original construction have been limited, and the local community in Ballasher are now frequently cut off from the rest of North Wales due to flooding, can the Minister advise what support avenues may be available for this vital work?
Minister.
Yeah, we as ministers take the impact on local communities of coastal flooding and erosion, like Ballasher, very seriously indeed. And as such, we published guidance to support local authorities to develop the coastal change adaptation plans, and over this Parliament, almost £12 million will be invested to support local authority coastal change adaptation. Scotland's National Island Plan sets out the actions and investments the Scottish Government intends to put in place to meaningfully improve outcomes for island communities, including building resilience to climate change. A new National Islands Plan will be developed for publication this year, and we will continue to listen and be guided by islanders to ensure that the new plan continues to deliver on our shared vision for a thriving, sustainable and successful island communities.
Briefly, Willie Rennie.
But government can't do this on its own. It needs partnership with farmers and landowners on islands and across the country. But it simply just isn't happening just now. We should be using the best practice and natural water management measures, but there is no proper discussion. There's no rollout of best practice. So when is that going to actually happen?
Minister.
I very much hear the points that Willie Rennie is making to me. And these are conversations that we've had before, and I'm very alive to the fact that we need those landscape interventions if we're going to make sure that we develop proper flood strategies going forward, and it's something I'm absolutely committed to looking at.
And very briefly, Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. A number of flood prevention schemes have been constructed in the Isle of Cumbrae in recent years, the most recent being on Millport Waterfront, a £48 million investment, 80% funded by the Scottish Government. Can the Minister advise what impact he envisages this investment will have on the long-term security of Millport from the adverse impacts of climate change?
Briefly as possible, Minister.
Well, the Millport Coastal Flood Protection exemplifies our commitment to improving resilience to flooding in our island communities. It was completed last year. It provides a 1 in 200-year standard of protection for 2 kilometres of Millport's coastline. It's improved flood protection for over 650 homes and businesses by reducing the risk of flooding and tidal overstopping and improving the community resilience to the impacts of climate change and increased frequency of storms. The scheme not only safeguards homes and businesses and critical infrastructure in Millport, but it also demonstrates how national leadership, local delivery and partnership working, which kind of goes to the point that Will Arena was making, can help us build that real resilience for island communities going forward.
Thank you. Question 5, Eleanor Whittam.
To ask the Scottish Government what steps it is taking to support small-scale food producers in rural communities in light of its commitments under the National Good Food Nation Plan.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government remains committed to supporting small-scale producers and empowering them to help deliver our vision for agriculture. This year, the Small Producers Pilot Fund is providing up to £1 million in resource funding, including support for the Practical Training Fund to help small producers access training and build stronger, sustainable businesses. The Practical Training Fund supports the Good Food Nation ambitions by providing access to training on sustainable food production for small producers, who will play a role in advancing the outcomes set out in the proposed National Good Food Nation Plan.
Eleanor Whittam.
The Cabinet Secretary will know that 2 fantastic local producers in my constituency, Muskeil Farm and Corrymains Farm, have lost their school contracts with East Ayrshire Council. And these are businesses that have long supported sustainable food, local jobs and the Good Food Nation vision, helping East Ayrshire to achieve gold status with the Soil Association's Good Food for Life scheme. This decision is a real setback and it raises serious questions about the procurement rules that councils must follow. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree it's time to review these frameworks to make sure that they don't end up working against the very goals that collectively we're trying to achieve?
Cabinet Secretary.
I completely understand the concern that's raised by Eleanor Whittam in relation to this case here. I mean, one thing I have to point out that, of course, these decisions are up to East Ayrshire Council to take, and public bodies are responsible for their own procurement decisions. But what I would say is that the Procurement Reform Act of 2014 doesn't already include a range of drivers to increase the quality and provenance of food and drink procured. In relation to a review of that, I believe the Economy and Fair Work Committee undertook a review of that Act with a number of recommendations that the Minister for Public Finance followed up on, and I believe there is due to be an update to that committee in relation to the recommendations that have been made. But I would say we, of course, want to ensure that we are supporting our local producers. Scotland Excel does a lot of work in relation to that, to really ensure that they are in the best position possible to bid for public contracts so that we don't end up in this situation. But I'm always keen to see what more we can do in relation to that, which is why public procurement is highlighted in the Good Food Nation plan.
Thank you. Question 6, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Rural Affairs Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding the potential impact on farmers and food producers of the introduction of meat-free days in public institutions such as schools and hospitals.
Minister.
It will come as no surprise to Murdo Fraser that I will be saying Scottish red meat is a world-renowned and recognised as a good source of vital nutrients, including iron, zinc and vitamin B12. We continue to work with the sector to ensure it thrives as part of a climate-smart food system, and decisions about what meals to serve are a matter for each managing authority, public or private, recognising that they are the best place to take into account the local dietary needs and demands. For example, in schools, provided that statutory food and drink standards are met, decisions about what products to include on menus is a matter for the local authority.
Fraser.
I congratulate the Minister on his track record in producing healthy red meat on Scottish farms, but he'll be very familiar with the concern expressed by Scottish farmers and food producers at the growth of meat-free days, for example, on school menus, and the substitution of meat with heavily processed meat substitutes instead of healthy home-produced Scottish meat products. And in the area that we both represent, we have a group, ProVeg, actively involved in designing school menus to reduce the availability of meat. So does the Minister agree with me that we should be supporting choice when it comes to menus in schools and elsewhere? And just as there always should be vegetarian and vegan options for those who want to choose them, there should also be the option of healthy, home-produced meat for those who wish to choose it.
I'm very grateful to Murdo Fraser for bringing the question up, because it's clearly something that's very close to my heart. I am aware of the concerns and of the campaigns amongst some stakeholders and the potential impact on farmers and fruit producers of the introduction of meat-free days in public institutions. Indeed, I will be meeting with the local campaigner on this very issue on the 9th of September in my capacity as a constituency MSP. But the Scottish Government continues to keep a focus on the food policy based on scientific evidence and in partnership with bodies such as Food Standards Scotland. But I absolutely get the point that he's making, that we should have a balanced diet for our children and young people.
Question number 7, Miles Briggs.
At what stage the current funding application is for the Edinburgh Biomes project at the Royal Botanic Gardens of Edinburgh?
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government has already committed £58 million to the Edinburgh Biomes programme over the course of the last 5 years to the end of 25-26. Now, we will continue to play an important role in supporting the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh as it moves forward with delivery of the programme within overall budget constraints across the public sector. The process to determine capital funding provision for future years is underway, and regular discussions with the Botanic Gardens are continuing to ensure that they are fully engaged with that process.
Miles Briggs.
Cabinet Secretary for that answer. The Cabinet Secretary will be aware of the risk to this globally important living collection of plants if the heating system was to fail, reinforcing the importance of delivering this project. The uncertainty of funding each financial year makes planning this project even more challenging. What assurance can the Cabinet Secretary give to the Royal Botanic Gardens of Edinburgh that they will receive the necessary funding to complete this project? And will she agree to visit the site with myself and other Edinburgh MSPs to see just the global importance of this project? Cabinet Secretary.
First of all, I'm more than happy to commit to that meeting, and I would say that I absolutely agree with Miles Briggs in terms of the overall importance of this project. I really just want to emphasise and offer assurance that officials are in regular discussion with the Royal Botanic Gardens Edinburgh to discuss this, and we have already provided quite a lot of flexibility with spend in trying to reprofile that, recognising some of the challenges that couldn't have been foreseen at the time when the project was first initiated. I think we all want to see this be a success. I think there's a refreshed business case that's being worked on at the moment that will feed into the budget processes. But again, more than happy to continue that discussion and undertake that visit.
Very briefly, Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how exactly it plans to protect vital carbon mitigation research at the Royal Botanical Garden in Edinburgh in the interim period whilst the Biomes project secures funding.
Cabinet Secretary.
I would just like to say how much, and I hope I've been able to emphasise that so far, we value the work that the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh undertakes. I think it's research, the collections that it has, and again, that is why we work so closely with them, particularly through the difficult budget situation that we're all facing at the moment. But I think we all want to work to support the Royal Botanic Gardens Edinburgh, and that's certainly what I'm committed to doing.
Question 8, Annie Wells.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government, in relation to its policies on land reform and land use, what discussions the Rural Affairs Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding any action that can be taken to address concerns about derelict land and vacant buildings in urban areas, including Glasgow?
Cabinet Secretary.
I have had discussions with ministerial colleagues relating to land reform, and particularly the links between the Land Reform Bill and other government policies. Now, this government is very aware of the harm of vacant and derelict sites can have on communities, and we are providing resources to address these issues. I know that Glasgow City Council is receiving £1.9 million this year from the Vacant and Derelict Land Fund. In addition to that, we are seeking to reform and modernise compulsory purchase in Scotland, and we're also currently reviewing the community right to buy.
Annie Wells.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, but can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what steps will the Scottish Government take? What steps will you take to ensure that the land left derelict since demolition of the Red Road flats over a decade ago is finally brought back into productive use, given that the local community has been left feeling ignored and let down during this time, and in light of its responsibilities for land reform and community empowerment?
Cabinet Secretary.
If the member wants to write with me, in particular in relation to the issue that she's just highlighted to Chamber, I'd be more than happy to come back with more specific detail on that. But what I would say is there are a number of different reforms underway that I think really will help address some of that situation. Now, I've mentioned already the Vacant and Derelict Land Fund. We're undertaking the review of Community Right to Buy, which I think will assist with that. We have the Scottish Land Fund. There's the review of compulsory purchase orders. And we've also committed as a government to undertake a consultation on compulsory sales orders as well. So I think when we look at these measures in the round, as well as what we're doing more broadly with land reform, I think it will help us to try and address these blights that exist in our communities and better address those problems.
Very, very briefly, Emma Harper.
Thanks, President Officer. We do still see derelict buildings such as the Interfloor factory in Dumfries causing urban blight and unfilled potential for many years, something residents, businesses and myself have campaigned on. So can the Cabinet Secretary outline her views on what more the UK Government could be doing to change the tax system that they control to promote refurbishment and regeneration rather than defaulting to demolition purely because of tax regulations?
Cabinet Secretary, briefly.
I would say that discussions with the UK Government in relation to those issues are very much ongoing, because I think some of the best solutions to the discrepancy in the tax treatment between whether that's refurbishment or retrofitting is for the UK Government to equalise the relevant VAT rates. And I think that would definitely see the benefits for the regeneration of communities, while also contributing to our net zero ambitions by reducing the emissions that are caused by demolition and new construction. But of course, happy to follow up with my government colleagues and respond to Emma Harper in more detail.
Thank you. That concludes portfolio questions on rural affairs, land reform and islands. Apologies to those I wasn't able to call. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next portfolio to allow front benches to change. And before we move to that portfolio, just a reminder to those who were not in the chamber earlier, we are tight for time across the course of the afternoon, and therefore I will try to get in as many supplementaries as I can, but questions and responses will need to be as brief as possible. The next portfolio is Health and Social Care. I call question number 1, Katie Clark.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the recently published report by National Records of Scotland, Healthy Life Expectancy 2021 to 2023.
Minister Jenny Minto.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Government remains committed to support everyone to live longer, healthier and more fulfilling lives. We recognise this latest report indicates a slight decline in Scottish healthy life expectancy, the number of years people can expect to live in good health. Experts attribute stalling improvements and widening health inequalities in Scotland to successive economic shocks, including austerity, Brexit, COVID-19 and the ongoing cost of living crisis. To tackle these inequalities, Scottish Government and COSLA jointly published a 10-year population health framework aiming to improve life expectancy, an objective measure, while closing the gap between the most deprived 20% of communities and the national average.
Katie Clark.
Healthy life expectancy estimates for both men and women in Scotland have hit their lowest point since records began in 2014. There are also clear regional variations, with North Ayrshire having joint lowest healthy life expectancy, with 52.5 years for women and 52.6 years for men. What work is the Scottish Government doing to improve health life expectancy nationally, and what work specifically is being done relating to North Ayrshire with North Ayrshire Council and NHS Ayrshire and Arran?
Minister.
I thank Katie Clark for her follow-up question and recognise that inequalities across Scotland are something that the Government needs to look at alongside local authorities and health boards. And that's why we have introduced the Population Health Framework. And within that, we have got 3 Marmot pilots, which is looking at specifically how can areas look at how they support their communities on a whole community perspective, which I was very pleased, not in the member's constituency, but I was able to visit an area in South Lanarkshire that is looking at total family support, specifically in areas of inequality, to support them move into a better population health position.
Brief supplementary, Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. In April, the Scottish Fiscal Commission published their Fiscal Sustainability Report, which raised concerns about the pressures ill health will place on the future Scottish budgets. They have said if population health improved relative to the rest of the United Kingdom, fiscal pressure could be eased, and in contrast, it would rise with worsening health. So given health life expectancy has been falling since 2014-16, is the Minister concerned we may be on the path to the worst health scenario projection?
Minister.
I thank Brian Whittle for his question and recognise the amount of work that he does around within the preventative health area. What the Scottish Government has looked at is the tobacco and vaping, working with the UK Government in the bill that's coming to try and reduce the amount of reliance that people have on tobacco and vaping. We've also, in October, will be bringing in regulations around healthy food options, regulations specifically on high-fat, salt and sugar. We clearly have the minimum unit pricing legislation around alcohol, and we're also working closely with the UK Government around the gambling levy to ensure that funding is then allocated specifically to support people with gambling issues, which again can impact on people's health. I think it's important to recognise that this government is ensuring we have a health in all policies policy to ensure that we are improving people's health, because if we don't have healthy people, we don't have healthy businesses, we don't have a healthy Scotland, and that's what I'm working towards.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for more brevity in the responses, certainly. Question 2 was not lodged. Question 3, Daniel Johnson.
Already on my feet, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what information it holds on the number of children currently waiting for an ADHD assessment and the median length of wait.
Mr Tom Arthur.
The Scottish Government does not hold data relating to the number of children waiting for an ADHD assessment or length of waits. Health boards will hold their own data on this. As I have previously acknowledged, work is needed to improve the quality of data available on neurodevelopmental support and services, and we are working with health boards and local authorities to better understand what is available and how it can be used to support improvements for children and families.
Daniel Johnson.
I remind the Chamber of my own diagnosis. I think the Minister's answer speaks for itself. The reality is that there's a crisis going on in terms of neurodiverse assessment, and the Government does not hold that data. How does it propose to fix the problem if it doesn't know the scale of the problem, or even actually the length of wait? Because the reality is children are going to wait till they're adults to be assessed. So when will the Government introduce a comprehensive system of waiting time data and indeed pathways for assessment? Thank you.
Minister.
Well, as a member will be aware, there has already been considerable work undertaken in the development of pathways, both with regard to children and young people and with adults. On the point around data, as I stated in my original answer, and as I also referred to in the statement I gave to Parliament towards the end of June, we understand the issue of interest in Parliament on the length of waiting lists and the median waits. I have set out that information is held by health boards, and I will repeat the point I made in my original answer and I made in response to questions to Parliament in June. We are working with health boards and engaging, along with local authorities, to understand the picture more clearly. And I'm conscious of the members' interest in this, and we will have the opportunity for dialogue as part of the pre-agreed summit between parties. And I'm sure this will be an area we can explore further.
A couple of supplementaries. I'll try to get them both in. They'll need to be brief. First, Karen Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I do welcome recent figures which show that the Scottish Government has met CAM's waiting time targets for the third successive quarter, but we must maintain the momentum, particularly in the face of unprecedented demand for mental health and neurodevelopmental services. Will the Minister say more about how health boards are being supported to improve their performance and provide our young people with the support that they so desperately need?
Can I start by putting on record my sincere thanks to the hard work of our staff and our NHS CAMS teams. but are playing a vital role in making this achievement possible. However, we cannot be complacent, and I agree with the member that we need to sustain this work and, importantly, ensure that standards are consistent across the country. And that can only be done with direct support from the Scottish Government. We do continue to work with boards to meet these targets through our support framework to ensure they have robust improvement plans in place. We're also directly investing in the system to ensure that children and young people receive the support they need when they need it.
Briefly, Stephen Kerr.
The Minister's response to Daniel Johnson really just sum up this SNP government. How can you possibly be part of the solution as a minister when you don't even ask for the data? How can a minister possibly be able to put forward ideas, policies, anything at all, if there's no data? Will the minister now ask the 14 health boards for the data? Will he put in his own FOIs if necessary to find out what the data is? Because this is simply unacceptable.
Minister.
It's interesting because Mr Kerr asked me a question when I gave a statement to Parliament at the end of June. And the point he made, the importance of data to understand the landscape, to develop policy, is important. That was a point I recognised then. It was a point I recognised in my statement that I gave to Parliament. It was a point I recognised in both my original and supplementary answer to Mr Johnson. Of course there is a need for data and to understand that, but health boards hold that data. And as I already stated and have indicated previously to Parliament, if my officials have been engaging directly with health boards to understand the range of data available, but importantly, how that data can be used and applied to the benefit of children and young people.
Thank you. Question 4, Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide further details regarding the announcement that NHS Dumfries and Galloway has moved to Stage 3 of the NHS Scotland Support and Intervention Framework.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Officer, the NHS Scotland Support and Intervention Framework is one of the key elements to monitor performance and manage risk across the NHS. In Scotland, all NHS boards are continuously reviewed against the framework based on their financial performance. The decision was taken to escalate NHS Dumfries and Galloway to Stage 3 of the framework for finance, and this will include increased oversight and coordinated engagement, ensuring the board is provided the appropriate support and returns to financial sustainability. Regular updates will be provided to ministers on the financial position of NHS Dumfries and Galloway following this escalation.
Craig Hoy.
I thank the Minister for that answer, but the escalation of the health board to Stage 3 is a genuine concern for people across Dumfries and Galloway, many of whom are already struggling to access healthcare. And the picture across Scotland is one of where health boards are under extreme pressure to make significant cost savings, rather than focusing on the day-to-day job of focusing on delivering the highest standards of healthcare. Through its funding formula, the SNP government has effectively left rural health boards high and dry and fending for themselves, and they are systematically failing rural Scotland due to this skewed funding formula. So will the Minister now commit to revising the NRAC funding formula to make sure that rural funding meets rural health needs and that health boards aren't left in an impossible situation, such as Dumfries and Galloway?
Cabinet Secretary.
Officer, there are a couple of facts that I'll point out to Craig Hoy regarding NRAC and the funding position. The first is that NRAC explicitly takes account of rurality and the challenge that there is of delivering services in rural and island communities. That is explicit in the NRAC position, so that directly contradicts Mr Hoy's understanding of it. And in terms of the financing of health boards across Scotland, of course, at the budget, we delivered a £21.7 billion funding settlement for the health and social care services in Scotland, a record funding settlement, one the Tories opposed. Not only that, their tax and spending plans would have seen £1 billion coming out of the funding of public services and seen the decimation of the health service under the plans that he was putting forward.
And brief supplementary, Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I recognise that this SNP government are committed to fully funding our NHS to ensure patients receive the best care possible. Given the challenges described, can the Cabinet Secretary please outline how NHS Dumfries and Galloway in particular will continue to benefit from record funding, notably in the 2025-26 Scottish Budget?
Cabinet Secretary.
Officer, in the 25-26 budget, NHS boards received increased investment in their baseline funding, bringing total investment to over £16.2 billion, with NHS Dumfries and Galloway receiving over £425 million. This represents an increase in investment of £60.7 million from 24-25, including additional funding to provide for prior year pay deals, as well as a range of funding to support vital frontline services. NHS Dumfries and Galloway's resource budget has increased by 22.5% 2.3% in real terms between 2010 and 2011 and 25-26, and has increased in cash terms by £218 million from 2006-7 to 25-26.
Question 5, Paul Sweeney.
Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what its response is to reports that paid-for visits at private health clinics in the first quarter of the year were at the highest level recorded in a single quarter.
Secretary.
My priority is to expand NHS capacity to cut waiting times. That's why we have invested a record £21.7 billion at the budget, which I note Labour MSPs refused to support. We are targeting more than £110 million of this year to cut waits. This targeted funding is expected to deliver more than 213,000 additional appointments and procedures this year. Our plan is clearly working, with a record number of hip and knee operations last year and the highest level of operations performed in the NHS in July since February 2020.
Sweeney.
Well, the NHS was established by Labour to provide universal health care free at the point of use, and record investment has been provided to the Scottish Government by the new Labour Government, which of course has not been utilised effectively because the measure is self-evident. For many of my constituents, the choice they are facing is to spend their life savings on private healthcare or languish on waiting lists. This is a result of failure of this government after 18 years. People waiting in their 20s for ADHD assessments to elderly waiting for cataract removals. More and more people are forced to seek private care out of desperation and pain. It is simply unacceptable and reminiscent of a time before the National Health Service, when private care was the only option. So does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that this rise for paid-for visits to private clinics is a result of an NHS that is failing to meet their needs?
Secretary.
I reiterate the point that I made in my initial question response to Mr Sweeney, that my priority is to expand NHS capacity, and that's what is happening. We've seen the largest number of operations performed in the health service in July, going all the way back to February 2020. We saw a record number of hip and knee operations performed in the NHS just last year. And of course, paid for private procedures in Scotland is much lower than other parts of the health service, including where Labour are in charge, such as a 54% higher level of paid for private provision delivered in the NHS in England. But of course, our service delivery would be made much easier if we were able to recruit internationally. And on that, I would ask for Mr Sweeney's recruitment to lobby the UK Government to stop the decimation of social care and health visas, 77% down last year, which would enable us to recruit into the positions that can help us get through these waits.
Question 6, Jamie Green.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to increase the availability of residential social care beds in the west of Scotland in light of reported closures and service reductions in the region.
Minister Tom Arthur.
We do not want to see the closure of good quality care homes, and we understand the concern this causes for residents and families. Regrettably, care homes can close for various reasons, and it is out with the remit of the Scottish Government to intervene, as although we have overall responsibility for social care policy in Scotland, the statutory responsibility for delivering, commissioning, providing appropriate social care support at a local level lies with local authorities, NHS boards and integrated health and social care partnerships. Funding of health and social care is at a record level. Our 2025-26 budget is investing £21.7 billion, including almost £2.2 billion of investment for social care and integration, delivering on our commitment to increase social care spending by 25% over this Parliament, 2 years ahead of schedule.
Jamie Green.
Can I thank the Minister for that answer, as unsurprising as it is? If social care is at record spending, then why are care homes in Greenock and Paisley closing down? Why are services on Arran reducing capacity? And why are the majority of care homes that are closing citing financial viability as the primary reason for their closure? We've lost over 250 care homes in the last decade. That's over 2,000 beds in the last decade. Donald McCaskill, as the Minister knows, has said that the whole of Scotland is in crisis in social care. I've got constituents languishing in hospital when they should be in a care home. Minister, what is the Scottish Government going to do about this?
Minister.
Look, on the point, in the member's last point with regards to delayed discharge, the Cabinet Secretary and myself engage closely with integrated joint boards and health boards and wider partners to work to drive improvement. And while we do have a challenge nationally, we do see examples of excellent practice across the country. So part of the challenge is to ensure that all the other parts of the country where the performance is not where it should be can learn from other parts of the country. He will also appreciate that many of the challenges that our social care sector is facing, and particularly residential care home, are macroeconomic factors out with the immediate control of the Scottish Government. We have been through a period of significant inflation, and of course there have been policy decisions, not least the decision by the UK Government around national insurance, which have had a significant impact. We are committed to working constructively with our partners at the local level to ensure we provide support for our social care sector, and we will continue to do so.
Well done. A reminder that the question is around residential social care in the west of Scotland. I call supplementary David Torrance.
Thank you, President Officer. I'm sure the Minister shares my concern that a number of residential beds are at risk of being lost following Labour's UK Government's reckless decision to raise employers' national insurance contributions, which is estimated to add a further cost of more than £84 million to Scotland's social care sector. Will the Minister therefore join me in calling on the Labour UK Government to immediately reimburse these costs in full to stop this unnecessary harm to vital lifeline services across the country?
Minister, if you could link it back to the substantive question.
Yes, this is an issue that impacts the west of Scotland and indeed many other parts of the country as well. And of course the Scottish Government is deeply concerned about the impact the UK Government's increase in employers' national insurance contributions will have on the social care sector in Scotland. The Scottish Government and COSLA continue to press the UK Government to fund the impacts of these changes on Scottish public services in full. This includes the vital services provided on behalf of local authorities by providers in the private and third sectors, such as the non-profit social care sector. Scottish Government officials have estimated that the social care sector faces additional costs of more than £84 million as a result of this decision.
Briefly, Jackie Bailey.
Recognising the need to improve the terms and conditions of the existing social care workforce, the Scottish Government was on the verge of allocating £38 million in funding to enhance sick pay, maternity pay and paternity pay provisions, which would in turn have helped reduce the loss of care home spaces in the west of Scotland. That was 18 months ago. The money disappeared at the 11th hour. Can I ask the Minister whether this work has been abandoned, or will we see the return of the £38 million pot to address the terms and conditions of the social care workforce?
Minister.
I've already outlined the investment that the Scottish Government is providing to social care to help ensure that we are driving up standards, including payment of at least the real living wage. And we have, of course, taken forward work around sectoral bargaining. I've engaged constructively with the UK Government on their Employment Rights Bill process. So we are committed to working constructively with our partners to drive forward standards in social care across Scotland. And of course, if Jackie Bailey is interested in this matter, then I'm sure she will bring forward reasoned proposals as part of the budget setting process, rather than sit in her hands as she did earlier this year.
Question 7, Finlay Carson.
Government, in light of the UK Government's recent announced funding to test new ways to tackle obesity and the reported limited access to weight management treatments across Scotland, what steps is it taking to ensure that people in rural areas such as Dumfries and Galloway can access new weight loss treatments, including through innovative models such as the pharmacist-led pilot schemes in GP practices?
Minister Jenny Minton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. We know we need a whole system approach to tackling obesity, with new treatments being part of a package of interventions that include prevention through making our food environment healthier. The Scottish Government and NHS Scotland issued a national consensus statement in September 2024 that recommended the introduction of obesity medications in a phased manner across NHS boards, so those in greatest clinical need benefit first. I welcome the UK-wide Obesity Pathway Innovation Programme funding competition with up to £10 million ring-fenced for devolved nations. Officials are working with all health boards, including NHS Dumfries and Galloway, and Innovation Leads to support development of bids that expand access to a range of weight management treatments across Scotland, which could indeed include community pharmacy. We are also working collaboratively on the development and subsequent implementation of a quality prescribing guide for primary prevention of cardiovascular disease, including a section on treating obesity.
Finlay Carson.
Thank the Minister for that response. Obesity does remain to be one of the most pressing public health challenges we face, and access to effective treatments is vital if we are to improve outcomes and reduce long-term pressures on our NHS. However, I continue to hear from constituents in Dumfries and Galloway that access to the new medication is extremely limited. And a recent response from Dumfries and Galloway Health Board stated that they hadn't even undertaken a cost-benefit analysis of the use of these new drugs. So how can we ensure that treatments like this are patient-centred?
Minister.
I thank Finlay Carson for his follow-up question and would like to recognise how much I appreciated visiting a community-led pharmacy in his constituency in Newton Stewart in the summer. I recognise that we have to ensure that all boards have pathways to ensure that those in need of the obesity-reducing drugs can have that. And we have been speaking directly with Dumfries and Galloway alongside some other health boards who are considering how to implement that pathway, but so far have been unable to reach an internal agreement as to how to progress this because of through services and finance and also primary care. But I'm very happy to follow that up with the member.
Question 8, Marie McNair.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on how it's supporting adults with ADHD to access medication.
Minister Tom Arthur.
Let me first clarify that not all adults with ADHD require medication and that a range of non-pharmacological supports should be made available following diagnosis. Where medication is required, this can be prescribed by specialist services following a formal diagnosis of ADHD. My officials have liaised with NHS boards across Scotland to understand what provision they have in place to deliver adult neurodevelopmental assessments and are exploring how to address current issues that are contributing towards long waiting times for assessment. We fund the National Autism Implementation Team, which is currently supporting NHS boards to develop, enhance and redesign existing local adult neurodevelopmental services.
Marie McNair.
I thank the Minister for that answer. I've been contacted by a constituent who has received a psychiatry assessment and an ADHD diagnosis when residing in England, and I'm advised that his GP is willing to prescribe Ritalin. However, this has been refused, apparently because of the need for a psychiatric assessment here in Scotland. Therefore, it seems that my constituent is without the medication he so desperately needs, despite having a diagnosis and a GP willing to prescribe Ritalin. Will the Minister intervene in this case and help secure the support my constituent needs?
As briefly as possible, Minister.
Presiding Officer, I acknowledge that the increase in adults taking neurodevelopmental assessment across Scotland is creating challenges for services. The risks of under-prescribing need to be carefully balanced against the potential risks of inappropriate prescribing, and as I hope as a member appreciates, that decisions on prescribing should be led by the appropriate clinicians. We are aware that different health boards have adopted varying approaches to private diagnosis or diagnosis from outside Scotland. We are aware that NHS Lothian has issued guidance to support clinicians, for example. My officials will draw on the experience of health boards and explore a sustainable solution that effectively addresses the balance of risks.
Thank you. With apologies again to members I wasn't able to call for supplementaries. That concludes portfolio questions on health and social care. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.